Over the last few episodes, we've built something pretty solid together. So far, we've covered the dichotomy of control, the basic distinction between what's yours to deal with and what isn't. Negative visualization, which is picturing the loss of something good so you can truly appreciate what you've got. Journaling, a written conversation with yourself that takes philosophy out of your head and into something real. The morning review, setting your intentions before the day starts pulling you in every direction. And voluntary discomfort, which is deliberately putting yourself through something hard just to check that your inner freedom is real and not just theoretical. And then we covered memento mori, the reminder that time isn't unlimited, and that clarity is what comes from facing that honestly. 6 habits, each one useful on its own, each one rooted in the same philosophical tradition and pointing toward the same thing. A life lived with real purpose from the inside according to your actual values, rather than just going along with whatever pressures happen to be focusing your attention that day. The question I want to tackle today is a practical one. How do you actually fit all of this into a real daily life? Not an ideal week where you've got unlimited time and nothing competing for it, but a week in the real world, with work, with kids, with fatigue, with all the little things that fill your day before you've even decided how you want to spend it. That's what this episode is for. Welcome back to the Stoic Mind Mechanic. My name is Tim Howell. This is the put it all together episode, the practical side of everything we've covered in this block of the series. We'll look at how the 6 habits connect to each other, how to fit them into your day, what the bare minimum version looks like, why the practice tends to fall apart and what to do when it does, and how to think about this as something that lasts for years, not just weeks. The key challenge of a wrap-up episode is that it becomes either a boring recap or an overwhelming prescription. I hope to avoid both. What I want is to leave you with something actionable you didn't have before rather than a summary of what you already knew. We're going to look at the integration, the relationships between the practices, the sequencing logic, the minimum viable version, and get some advice on what to do when the practice breaks down. So, no new philosophy today, just a bit of a roadmap. So, here's something important to understand. These 6 habits aren't 6 separate tools in a toolbox. They're a system. They fit together. Understanding how they fit together changes how you approach each one on its own. The foundation of everything is the dichotomy of control. Everything else we do is really just a different way of applying this one idea. The quality of your inner life depends on what you decide to focus on, and you can choose to shift your attention from things that aren't yours to handle towards things that are. Without this as your starting point, the other habits are just techniques floating in mid-air, maybe useful independently, but not really grounded in anything. Sitting on top of that foundation are 2 main pillars. The first pillar is about seeing clearly. These are the habits that sharpen your awareness of what's actually going on in your life, in your own mind, and in your relationship with time. Negative visualization, memento mori, and asking yourself what you can and can't control all do this job. At their core, they're all about seeing things clearly and honestly. The second pillar is about direction. These are the habits that deliberately set the course of your day ahead of time rather than just reacting to events. The morning review and the evening journal both do this. They create the right conditions for meeting the day with intention rather than just surviving it. And then right at the top, the habit that tests whether the foundation and the pillars are actually solid is voluntary discomfort. This is where you find out if the other habits are real or just ideas you've been telling yourself. You can intellectually agree with everything the other habits point toward. Voluntary discomfort is where you find out if that agreement actually holds up when things get hard. So here's what the full daily practice looks like when everything's in place. I want to go through it in detail because seeing the whole picture at once is different from just knowing each piece. When you wake up, 1 minute of stillness. Just being present before you pick up your phone, before the news, before any obligations start arriving. In the morning review. 5 to 10 minutes. Honest anticipation of the day, a philosophical reset and one clear intention. Also in the morning, your memento mori reminder. 30 seconds, one sentence, this day won't come again, what does it actually ask of me? And then throughout the day, the dichotomy check, as needed. Whenever anxiety or frustration shows up, is this actually up to me? Redirect from there. Once or twice a week, negative visualization. 5 minutes. Either picture the absence of something you value to remind yourself how much you appreciate it, or mentally rehearse something difficult you're expecting. Both build gratitude and resilience. And once a month, voluntary discomfort. A session or a day. Test the connection between how you feel and how comfortable you are. Build real inner resilience. And in the evening, journaling. 10 to 15 minutes. An honest look back. Where did I fall short today? Where did I hold up? What does tomorrow ask of me? That's the full version. Around 25 to 30 minutes on a normal day. With voluntary discomfort being periodic rather than daily. Marcus Aurelius was running an empire, fighting wars and managing a plague, and he still made time for something like this. So can you. But let's be honest, there will be days, plenty of them, when 25 minutes just isn't on the table. And the single most reliable way to kill any good habit is to treat it as an all or nothing. Either you do the full version or you do nothing. That's not how a lasting practice works. So here's the minimum viable version, the floor you don't go below. In the morning, one morning intention, 1 minute. One honest sentence about the day ahead and who you intend to be in it. As needed, the dichotomy check, 30 seconds. One question when something difficult comes up. Is this up to me? And in the evening, a 3-sentence journal, 2 minutes. One thing you fell short on, one thing you did well, and one question for tomorrow. 4 minutes in total, every day, even on your hardest day. That's the absolute minimum. Now here's the thing. 4 minutes without fail every day across a year will outperform 25 minutes done erratically every time. Beyond just the daily routine, there are some specific ways the individual habits connect to and strengthen each other. Understanding this is what separates practicing 6 separate techniques from practicing one coherent system. The morning review and the evening journal are in conversation with each other. The morning sets the intention and the evening checks how it went. The quality of your morning review gets better when you've been honest in the previous night's journal, because that honesty shows you where the intention was really tested and how it held. They're not 2 separate habits, they're 2 halves of one ongoing conversation with yourself. Negative visualization and memento mori are on the same track. Both work by making absence feel real. One by imagining temporarily losing something you value, the other by facing the fact that everything eventually ends. Memento mori is really negative visualization taken all the way to its logical conclusion. And once you've genuinely sat with memento mori, the smaller imaginings of loss in negative visualization tend to carry a little bit less weight. You've already met the bigger thing. Voluntary discomfort and the dichotomy of control are the practice and the theory of the same insight. The dichotomy of control tells you that your well-being doesn't depend on your circumstances. Voluntary discomfort checks whether if that's actually true. In the deepest sense, they're the same habit, one you do in your mind, but the other you do with your body. And all 6 habits, when you step back, are answering one question that the whole Stoic tradition is really getting at. Who am I in the absence of all the things I have been using to avoid that question? The daily habit peels away, layer by layer, the noise, the cushioning and the distractions that fill up an ordinary life. And in the space that opens up, something becomes available that was always there but rarely visited. The real you, your character, your values, your ability to reason and choose and act with integrity. Things that no external circumstances can give you or take away from you. Let's be honest here, the practice will break down, because expecting that it won't is actually one of the most reliable ways of making sure it does. Here are the 4 ways that it usually falls apart, and some little tips about what you can do with each one. The first is one missed day turns into giving up altogether. You miss one morning review and you tell yourself you'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and the habit doesn't feel natural anymore because the rhythm's broken and the distance between you and the practice has grown. The fix for that is the minimum viable version exists exactly for this moment. One honest sentence of anticipation, one intention. You haven't abandoned the practice, you've scaled it back. Scale it back up when things settle. The second typical failure is the practice becomes a performance. Your journal entries start describing what you wish you had done rather than what you did do. The morning review becomes an affirmation session rather than an honest anticipation. The voluntary discomfort becomes a story you tell yourself rather than a real test. The sign something's wrong is when the practice stops producing anything you didn't already know. And the fix for this is to ask yourself one question you've been avoiding. Write the sentence you've been steering around. Choose a discomfort that actually costs you something. The third point of failure is reading about Stoicism in thinking it will replace actually doing it. The video, the book, the podcast gives you the feeling of engaging with the philosophy without requiring any of the real effort. The sign of this is when your reading list grows while your practice shrinks. The fix for this is a short break from new input and a return to the simplest version of the practice. 4 minutes every day for 2 weeks, then go back to learning. The fourth point of failure is isolated practice. You do the habits in the morning and evening and then spend the other 22 hours completely disconnected from the philosophy. The fix here isn't a schedule change, it's a shift in how you think about the habits. They're not containers for your Stoic life, they're training grounds for it. The dichotomy check isn't just for the journal, it's for the moment of frustration in the middle of a meeting. Memento mori isn't just a morning sentence, it's the quality of attention you bring to the person you're talking to right now. The practice belongs inside the day, not just around the edges of it. I want to say something about time because I think there's a common misunderstanding about philosophical practice in the age of the 30-day challenge and annual self-improvement plans. The Stoic practice isn't a program with a finish line. It doesn't work like a diet or a fitness challenge where you follow it for a set period of time and miraculously achieve the new permanent version of you. The practice is the destination. The philosophical life isn't something you achieve and then coast on. It's something you practice every day for as long as you're alive. Marcus Aurelius was still doing this in his 60s. Epictetus was still teaching in his 80s. And Seneca was writing some of his sharpest work in the final months of his life. That's not a gloomy thought. It's a reorientation of what success actually looks like. In the Stoic view, the goal isn't to reach a place where you no longer need the practice. The goal is to build a character that meets each day, whatever it brings, with gradually increasing steadiness, clarity and honesty. Progress isn't always obvious or straight line, but it's real. Someone who's practiced honestly for 5 years meets difficulty differently from someone who hasn't. Not perfectly and not without struggle, but differently. So here's roughly what the long game looks like. In the first few months, the habits feel like effort and may feel a bit artificial. You're reminding yourself to do things that don't feel natural yet. The dichotomy check takes conscious thought. The morning review requires pushing against old habits. After about a year, some of the habits start to feel more accessible, not automatic, but within easier reach. The question, is this within my control, comes to mind closer to the actual moment of difficulty rather than an hour after the fact. After several years, the philosophy starts to live inside you rather than being something you apply to situations from the outside. Your character changes, not because the effort is over, but because the effort has been kept up long enough to build something that genuinely wasn't there before. As Aristotle put it, and the Stoics live by this truth, We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. I want to close this episode and this block of the series with something Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself after years of practice, not as a declaration of achievement, but as a daily reminder of what the practice is actually for. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. For I seek the truth by which no one was ever fully harmed. It is the person who continues in self-deception and ignorance who is harmed. I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed. That line is the direction the whole Stoic practice is pointing in, not the performance of virtue, not collecting philosophical brownie points, but it's the honest, daily, never quite finished search for a clearer understanding of what is true and what is good, done in private, tested in practice, and improved through failure and returned to with patience. If you've been with this series from the beginning, you now have a complete toolkit. Not a mastery that comes with years, not weeks, but the tools which, when used honestly, are enough. So your task from this episode is simple but specific. This week, commit to the minimum viable version every single day. One morning intention, the dichotomy check when something difficult comes up. 3 sentences in the evening, 7 days, no skipping. Not because 7 days will transform you, but because 7 consecutive days of actual practice will show you something that 18 episodes of listening to me ramble on can't. That this practice is yours, that it works, and that you can sustain it. In the next episode, the series moves into its next big phase. We've covered where Stoicism came from, the key figures, the philosophical system, and the habits. Now we go deeper into the actual Stoic principles, starting with one of the most practically powerful and most misunderstood of all, the idea of preferred indifference. What it actually means to treat external things, health, money, relationships, success, in the right way, not dismissing them, not obsessing over them, but engaging with them wisely, pursuing them fully without needing them absolutely. So I hope you'll join me for that one. Please like and subscribe if this series has been useful. Share it with someone who you think might be ready for it. Leave me a comment below if you've managed to engage with Stoicism. I'd love to hear from you. So until then, keep calm, keep stoic, and I'll see you in the next one.